Moses. The story of Moses, the leader of a Jewish people. Sometime during the 20th century before our era, a small and unimportant tribe of Semitic shepherds had left its old home, which was situated in the land of Ur, on the mouth of the Euphrates, and had tried to find a new pasture within the domain of the king of Babylonia. They had been driven away by the royal soldiers. They had moved westward looking for a little piece of unoccupied territory where they might set up their tents. The tribe of shepherds was known as the Hebrews, or as we call them, the Jews. They had wandered far and wide, and after many years of dreary they had been given shelter in Egypt. For more than 5 centuries, they had dwelt among the Egyptians, and when their adopted country had been overrun by the Hyksos marauders, as I told you in the story of Egypt, they had managed to make themselves useful to the foreign invader and had been left in the undisturbed possession of their grazing fields. But after a long war of independence by the Egyptians had driven the Hyksos out of the valley of the Nile, and then the Jews had come upon evil times. They had been degraded to the rank of common slaves. They had been forced to work on the royal roads and on the pyramids. And as the frontiers were guarded by the Egyptian soldiers, it had been impossible for the Jews to escape. After many years of suffering, they were saved from their miserable fate by the young Jew called Moses, who for a long time had dwelt in the desert, where had learned to appreciate the simple virtues of his earliest ancestors, who had kept away from cities and city life, and had refused to let themselves be corrupted by the ease and the luxury of foreign civilization. Moses decided to bring his people back to a love of the way of the patriarchs. He succeeded in evading the Egyptian troops that were sent after him and led his fellow tribesmen in the heart of a plain at the foot of a Mount Sinai. During his long and lonely life in the desert, he had learned to revere the strength of the great God of the thunder and the storm, who ruled the high heavens and upon whom the shepherds depended on for life and breath. This God, one of the many divinities who were widely worshipped in Western Asia, was called Jehovah, and through the teaching of Moses, he became the sole master of the Hebrew race. One day Moses disappeared from the camp of the Jews. It was whispered that he had gone away carrying 2 tablets of rough-hewn stone. That afternoon, the top of the mountain was lost to sight. The darkness of a terrible storm hid it from the eye of man. But when Moses returned, behold, there stood engraved upon the tablets the words which Jehovah had spoken unto the people of Israel amidst the crash of his thunder and the blinding flashes of his lightning. And from that moment, Jehovah was reconciled by all the Jews as the highest master of their fate, the only true God who had taught them how to live holy lives when he bade them to follow the wise lessons of his 10 commandments. They followed Moses when he bade them to continue their journey through the desert. They obeyed him when he told them what to eat and drink and what to avoid, that they might keep well in their hot climate. And finally, after many years of wandering, they came to a land which seemed pleasant and prosperous. It was called Palestine, which means the country of the Philistines, the Philistinians, a small tribe of Cretans who had settled along the coast after they had been driven away from their own land. Unfortunately, the mainland Palestine was already inhabited by another Semitic race called the Canaanites, but the Jews forced their way into the valleys and built themselves cities, constructed a mighty temple in a town which they named Jerusalem, the hope of peace. As for Moses, he was no longer the leader of his people. He had been allowed to see the mountain ridges of Palestine from afar, but he had closed his tired eyes for all time. He had worked faithfully and hard to please Jehovah. Not only had he guided his brethren out of the foreign slavery into the free and independent life of a new home, but he had also made the Jews the first of all nations to worship a single God. The Phonecians who gave us our alphabet. The Phonecians, who were the neighbors of the Jews, were a Semitic tribe which at a very early age had settled along the shores of the Mediterranean. They had built themselves 2 well-fortified towns, Tyre and Sidon, and within a short time they had gained a monopoly of the trade of the western seas. Their ships went regularly to Greece and Italy and Spain. They even ventured beyond the Straits of Gibraltar to visit the Sicily Islands, where they could buy tin. Wherever they went, they built themselves small trading stations, which they called colonies. Many of these were the origin of modern cities, such as Cadiz and Marseilles. They bought and sold whatever promised to bring them a good profit. They were not troubled by a conscience. If we are to believe all the neighbors, they did not know what the word honesty or integrity meant. They regarded a well-filled treasure chest the highest ideal of all good citizens. Indeed, they were very unpleasant people and did not have a single friend. Nevertheless, they have rendered all coming generations one service of the greatest possible value. They gave us our alphabet. The Phoenicians had been familiar with the art of writing invented by the Sumerians, but they regarded these pothooks as a clumsy waste of time. They were practical businessmen and could not spend hours engraving 2 or 3 letters. They set to work and invented a new system of writing which was greatly superior to the old one. They borrowed a few pictures from the Egyptians, and they simplified a number of the wedge-shaped figures of the Sumerians. They sacrificed the pretty looks of the older system for the advantage of speed, and they reduced to thousands of different images to a short and handy alphabet of 22 letters. In due course of time, this alphabet traveled across the Aegean Sea and entered Greece. The Greeks added a few letters of their own and carried the improved system to Italy. The Romans modified the figures somewhat and in turn taught them to the wild barbarians of the Western Europe. Those wild barbarians were our own ancestors, and that is the reason why this book is written in characters that are of Phoenician origin and not in the hieroglyphics of the Egyptians or in the nail script of the Sumerians.